This is the Test Administrator Training Module for Oregon's statewide interim assessment system, required for all district and school test coordinators, as well as all test administrators. This training module includes an overview of the Oregon Balanced Assessment System and interim assessment features. In addition, interim assessment uses, test security, and administration features. We will begin with an overview of the Oregon Balanced Assessment System and the interim assessment features. The Oregon statewide assessment system consists of three components. This training module pertains to the interim assessment system, designed to support teaching and learning throughout the year. However, please note the interim assessment system also includes tools and resources in Tools for Teachers that support classroom-based formative assessment practices. The Oregon Interim Assessment System for English Language Arts, Mathematics, and Science is free to educators statewide. This includes the instructional and formative assessment resources in Tools for Teachers for both English Language Arts and Mathematics. ODE has worked with both Smarter Balanced and Cambium Assessment Incorporated to provide educators and students with remote administration options. For more information on remote certification, please refer to the slides later in this training. The interim assessment system provides the same accessibility supports as the OSAS summative assessments. And all student data is reported in the centralized reporting system through the OSAS portal. Educators have further flexibility in administration by providing access to out-of-grade level interim assessments aligned to both the Oregon State standards and the full complexity of those standards. An additional feature allows teachers to access English Language Arts and Math items at the individual level within Tools for Teachers. This feature will be further discussed in the interim test security section of this training module. This training, however, includes the following interim assessment systems: English Language Arts, Mathematics, and Science. Please note that though the interim assessments provide both in-grade and out-of-grade level administration, interim assessments aligned to the grade level instructional standards provide educators the most actionable data. As previously stated, the Oregon Interim Assessment System provides flexibility in the types of assessments available for educator administration. Interim assessment blocks, or IABs, are available in all content areas and target a wide range of connected standards. For both English Language Arts and Mathematics, focused interim assessment blocks, or focused IABs, are available. These focused IABs target a smaller scope of learning targets, usually 1 or 2, and provide a more precise set of associated standards. Please note, the science interim assessments contain only interim assessment blocks at this time. There are over 100 different interim assessment blocks available for English Language Arts and Mathematics. These are aligned to the Oregon State standards and their assessment or learning targets. In this visual, the cube consists of fewer targets within each IAB compared to the summative assessment as a whole. This allows educators to gather evidence and information associated with specific assessment or learning targets and their associated standards. Further, this allows educators to focus on assessment targets within a claim, such as literary text from Claim 1 reading, or operations and algebraic thinking from the Mathematics Claim 1 of concepts and procedures. The approximate testing time for the interim assessment blocks is anywhere from 45 to 55 minutes, or equivalent to one class session. Further, these IABs are shorter in length, consisting of 6 to 18 items, and can be directly connected to the associated tools within Tools for Teachers and their instructional resources. The last type of interim assessment available in English Language Arts and Mathematics within the interim assessment system is the Focused Interim Assessment Block, or Focused IAB. In this image, there are even fewer assessment targets within the interim assessment, and they provide the most detailed information in alignment to the assessed targets and their associated learning standards. This allows educators to dive deeper within a claim to get very specific assessment or learning targets within that claim, such as text analysis or operations with whole numbers and decimals. The focused IABs also provide educators with direct connections to the Tools for Teachers instructional resources and consist of about 10 to 15 items. The approximate testing time for the focused IAB is also a 45 to 55-minute class session. Please note that some of the IABs, or focused IABs, do require some educator hand scoring components. Please refer to the ODE Interim Assessment webinar presentations for more information on how to conduct hand scoring. Science interim assessment blocks slightly differ in their design compared to English Language Arts and Mathematics. Rather than a learning target approach, they are organized and aligned directly to the Oregon State Science Standards. For example, the entire task would be aligned to a specific standard such as Grade 5 PS1-1. Further, the science IABs are organized by cluster items, which may include up to 4 or 8 interactions to engage in the three-dimensional design of the assessment. The science interim assessment blocks require a testing time ranging from 10 to 20 minutes to administer, and because there is no hand scoring requirements, scores are available immediately after administration. This last feature of the interim assessment system shows additional flexibility, which allows educators to administer the interim assessments in both a standardized, meaning on-demand format similar to the summative assessment, or in a non-standardized administration, allowing for flexibility of use during direct classroom instruction. This allows educators to use individual items in real-time instruction. In a few slides, we will discuss the test security requirements for individual use of items. In this second section, we'll discuss interim assessment uses, test security, and administration features. First, we will discuss interim training requirements in order for TAs to gain access to the interim assessment system. Interim assessment must be activated for educators by either their direct testing coordinator or their local school testing coordinator. The decision to allow educators access to the interim assessments is determined by their district. If the educator has completed the prior year's TA requirements, they will only need to provide evidence that they have completed this Module 8 around interim assessment administration and test security. However, if an educator did not have a TA user account from a prior instructional year, or if the educator has transitioned to a new district which is different from last year, they must complete the reading requirements in Table 5 of the Test Administration Manual. And in addition to completing this Module 8, they must also complete training modules 2, 3, and 4 located in the Assessment Training Materials webpage. Test administrators should follow the following guidance when administering interim assessments whether in person or in a remote setting. First, know the purpose for administering the interim assessments. These are not for benchmarking, but instead for guiding instruction within the classroom. Second, choose the interim assessment that will provide the best information and best aligns to instruction occurring in the class. Third, please ensure and provide necessary supports for consideration in order for students to demonstrate their knowledge and skills. Again, the interim assessment system has the same accessibility supports as the summative assessment. And finally, use the information to guide next steps or what additional supports are required or needed within instruction. The following provide examples of what should not be done within the context of the interim assessment. First, do not post items on the internet or on any public page, and do not email interim assessment test items. If an educator has printed off individual items to be used during classroom instruction, the educator should collect the interim assessment items prior to students leaving the class and properly secure the items. Once the educator is done using the interim assessment items as part of their formative assessment cycle of learning, educators should securely dispose the items using the same test security protocols as outlined for the summative assessment. The interim assessment system uses the same OSAS portal that is used for administration of the summative assessment. Within the OSAS portal, educators will use the interim assessment button at the top of the page to navigate to the Oregon Interim Assessment System and associated resources. Educators will use the same process as described in Module 2, Test Administration, to activate or assign an interim assessment for students. If administering the interims remotely, guidance provided in the remote certification course will support teachers in setting up a remote session and administering interims remotely. Once an educator has entered into the interim assessment portal, educators can activate or assign interims by clicking on the TA interface tile. Educators will use the same process as described in Module 2 to activate or assign an interim assessment for students. One feature available for educators is the assessment viewing application, which allows educators to preview items included in the different types of interim assessment blocks. As a reminder, please follow the test security guidance. Educators can use this function of the assessment viewing application as part of their non-standardized use to enhance classroom instructional practices or preview items that students would see in a real test setting. After administering an interim assessment, to view student results or to complete any hand scoring of items within the OSAS portal, educators will use the reporting interface tile to navigate to the centralized reporting system. As previously stated, educators have the option of remote administration of the interim assessments. However, prior to administering any interim assessments remotely, the TA must first complete the Remote Test Administration Certification course. Once completed, the TA will automatically have this feature activated in their TA account. Again, there are no additional steps required by the DTC or STC as long as the Interim Assessment Test Group has been assigned to the TA. For students to access the interim assessments remotely, the students will use the OSAS Secure Browser or a remote interim student testing site. The specific details on remote administration for both educators and students is included in the Remote Test Administration Certification course. Again, remote administration options are an enhanced feature and not required as part of the Oregon Interim Assessment System. please refer to local context for remote administration considerations or talk about available options with your district testing coordinator, building administrator, or school testing coordinator. Regardless of administration for remote or in-person administration of the interim assessments, a TA will access the TA interface, and the first thing they will see is this Proctor application for test delivery system landing page. To activate or assign an interim assessment, educators will select the Start a New Session Now tile. Upon doing so, this will allow the educator to then choose which IAB or focused IAB to administer. As shown, a teacher can choose from the content areas they would like to administer, and the grade level they would like to access. And finally, they will select which interim assessment to administer or assign. After students have completed the interim assessment that has been assigned by the educator, educators will access the interim assessment results by clicking on the reporting tile. The information will appear in the centralized reporting system. Educators will access the school or class or student level data within CRS. Additionally, they will be able to look at how students performed as a collective group and how they performed on individual items. Detailed information on this process is included on the ODE Interim Assessment webpage under the Interim Assessment Webinar modules. If an interim assessment requires hand scoring, they will need to complete the hand scoring within the OSAS centralized reporting system. Again, these details and extra information on this process are included on the ODE Interim Assessment webpage. As stated at the beginning of this training, the interim assessment also has a Tools for Teachers component. This slide provides a quick overview on how to access Tools for Teachers for English Language Arts and Mathematics through the OSAS portal. By selecting the Tools for Teachers tile, educators will be able to access the platform using their same OSAS sign-in credentials or TA sign-in credentials. Within Tools for Teachers, educators will be able to access numerous instructional activities aligned to both interim assessments and associated assessment or learning targets. The Tools for Teachers website also provides detailed student performance progressions for use in classroom instruction or for developing evidence of learning. Additionally, the platform provides numerous formative assessment strategies and suggestions for students to establish learning success criteria. For access to resources discussed in this training, or for additional resources for the interim assessment system, please navigate to the ODE Interim Assessment webpage. This concludes the Module 8 Interim Assessment Administration and Test Security training.